Welcome to Peter and Ruffy's Football Show. I'm Peter Martin, Alan Ruff and Alison McConnell here with me in the studio. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to our YouTube channel. More and more people joining the football family, and we thank you for that. And also, if you hit the bell, you'll get notifications of our unique video content. I've got here, Ruffy, one of the old PLZ mugs, just on the basis that I've got a sore throat. Can't believe it. Anyway, don't you bother talking while I'm having a drink. Lots to talk about, Ruffy.
Done with the strepsils.
Yes, they're coming. That's a great joke. Only a few people will get that gag from you, Ruffy. John Beaton is the cup final referee. We're going to talk about that. Hearts chairman, former Hearts chairman Leslie Deans, certainly has got some controversial points on the recent game with Celtic. Overseas players, there's good news from the SPFL and the SFA on that. There's more kids playing organised football. That's another bit of good news from the SYFA. 6,000 more up from the previous year, so that's really good news. Lots more teams, lots more boys and girls playing the game. And of course, what about the treatment of Rangers by not only the French club Lyon, but the French government? Certainly some of the comments coming out have been disparaging. And staying with the Rangers theme, Dave King has certainly condemned the club over their treatment of banning certain individuals from Ibrox from the media. So Chris Sutton, the latest, he can just get a raffle ticket like the rest of us, Ali. Is that fair?
That's pretty much how it's been.
Exactly. So there's lots to talk about. Don't worry, you don't need to elaborate on that point, Ali. We're well aware of where it stands. John Beaton.
Yeah, we've said it all through the season, you know, that referees are assessed. Doesn't matter where they are, what league they're in, but they get points towards being getting cup finals, getting semi-finals. And I'm sure John Beaton will be up there. I think we've got 3 or 4 really good referees. But I would say he's one of the best. So I know they all have some wee bit of controversy throughout the season, but you know, I think it's good that he's been appointed.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem, and I think this is probably with the increase in social media constantly, you get, and what a lot of people don't know is a lot of the match officials, they get a bit of abuse in the background, their families, their background, and what they're questioned about, whether their allegiances with Celtic or Rangers or any other club, which I think is very unhelpful. I think we should be constantly concentrating on what they do. If they have a bad game, you call it, but the whole background noise to it becomes poisonous, and I think that's where I have great sympathy for referees, and I can't wait for VAR to come in.
Yeah, I think VAR will be a huge help. I also think there's a fairly sound argument for full-time referees and full-time officials, professional officials, if you want to raise the standards, because I think a lot of the criticism that comes towards officials is really through a lack of consistency. I think sometimes you see things given one week and not given another, and I think it irritates fans, it irritates players, it irritates coaching staff. I think if you had full-time officials and they can concentrate a bit more on elements of it, I think it would raise the standard all round. Yeah,
absolutely. So he's the ref. As far as the officials, Graham Stewart, Callum Spence are his assistants, and Greg Aitken will be the 4th official for that one, for the Celtic Hibs Scottish League Cup final. Some other news that's come out in the last few hours. Former Hearts chairman Leslie Deans, I know him well from my days in Edinburgh. He told the local paper there that there's no excuse for not offering Barry Mackay an apology after he was struck by a plastic bottle thrown by a section of Celtic fans at the Green Brigade end, and one man has been arrested, but there was much more being fired from that end. It wasn't just one guy.
No, and it's good they've got the one guy, but you want everybody to get it. You know that the club should apologise, but in the light of day, it's the people who throw the things that should be punished, and the more that get punished, you would like to say it would sink in with the rest of them that it just doesn't make the club look good at all.
Yeah,
you know, but it's the individual for me, Peter. You know, they're the ones that should be heavily treated with this.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think we'll get too many people disagreeing with that. Leslie goes on to say, now this is where we might be at odds with him. He does say that if this had happened during a UEFA game, Celtic would have been thrown out of the competition. again, a point that's well worthy of debate. He says the very least that should happen here is the game should be replayed. In fact, he says there's an argument to say Hearts should be awarded the points. Well, I think that's where I think he's maybe just gilding the lily a little bit.
I suspect his tongue might be very firmly in his cheek at this point, to be honest with you. I just don't... I think if you've to even go over from August until now, so we're not even talking historically decisions that have altered games. If we just talk about the here and now of this season, I think right now, off the top of our heads, we could come up with maybe 6 games where a contentious decision or a decision that's been proven to be wrong has cost a club points. I think we spoke about it earlier. I think Celtic had a legitimate goal at Tynecastle on the opening night of the season, chopped off. I think it didn't detract overall from the picture of that night. I didn't think Celtic played particularly well. I thought Hearts deserved to win that game. I didn't think it was the reason why they lost. But I think these things happen. We would like them not to happen.
Do you think their anger's maybe been exacerbated by the fact that it was an offside goal?
Yeah, I think it was offside.
Yeah.
I think some of the arguments in the aftermath of it have been overcooked. I think when you look at it, to me, it was marginal at the time when you analyse it. I think he was offside. I think he was probably half a yard offside. But when you saw it in live time, and when you saw it, first of all, in the aftermath of the game, I don't think it was as obvious as what it's been made out to be.
Yeah, because the assistant has to help his referee in the call, Rafi.
Right, we're talking about millimetre seconds movement. I watched the game and the Celtic Dundee United game at the weekend, and Kay goes on the shoulder of a defender, and it's VAR would catch it. Yeah. You know, when you watched it 2 or 3 times, but he's on the shoulder of every defence, and he's so sharp.
So he plays all the time.
And the linesman's got to make the reaction.
Yeah.
I would just think back to your man for Hearts. Did he make any comments when Neil Lennon got attacked at Tynecastle? Did he come out and start all that?
Well, to be honest with you, Ruffy, I mean, the thing
you can't just pick your moments of when to come out and say things.
No, but that's for me. That's getting into what I criticise a lot of fans on here for, which is whataboutery. It's something that I, over a 30-odd year in journalism and, presenting radio shows and listening on television to people putting points to us, you can't go that, but what about that? Because it doesn't work like that. You deal with the here and now, you deal with the incident. He's asked a question by a journalist, what's your thoughts on the attack on Barry Mackay at the corner? Here's my reply. What's your thoughts on the offside goal? Here's my reply. So you deal in the here and now. Sometimes we can deal 24 hours prior to it, because we had a situation where, so many people were casting aspersions on the referee for the Ryan Porteous challenge, which, whether there's minimal contact, which is what Jack Ross's clever way of saying, minimal and half a yard offside is offside. Yeah. Minimal contact is he takes his leg away. Yeah. It's a penalty. I think the here and now is what we deal with on a basis. If we're starting to go, by the way, you delve into what I call pub culture, and you never resolve it. You'll never win with anybody. Leslie Deans is only commenting on this. Should the game be replayed? Do you agree with that? No. But we can't start going that way and looking at every other incident. I
think also in that game, if memory serves me correctly, I think Carol Starfelt was flagged offside when he might have had a free header, and I think TV pictures then go on and show that he's on. But I don't think you can go back and shout for games to be replayed and have points awarded elsewhere, because it happens repeatedly through the course of the season, and it happens at grounds when it doesn't involve Celtic and Rangers. It doesn't get a tenth of the coverage that we have here today. It's not the microscopic forensic inquiry into things that we have now. It slips under the radar. It's maybe a talking point in the immediate aftermath of the game. It would be mentioned by the likes of myself or any journalist at the game. It would be flagged up, but we wouldn't be talking about it almost a week later. Yeah, you're absolutely. I think that's a great point. Another point here, Ruffy, is while it's a valid point from Leslie Deans, I think Celtic should have taken the moral high ground here and apologised to Barry Mackay without having somebody trying to prompt it out of them. Yeah, it'd been a good PR exercise. It'd be good for the club, to come out. We appreciate that what happened. We will find the culprits and punish them accordingly. Unfortunately, they've only got one, and as you say, there must have been others. So I keep saying it. The CCTV
TV rooms. We've got one at Partick Thistle. You could go into the CCT room and see the whole ground. You can look at the whole support. You can zoom in. You can do anything you like. So they should use everything at their disposal, you know, to identify these people and punish them.
Yeah, absolutely. So lots of people coming in and giving their thoughts on that. Stephen Scott says, hello to all you Muppets on the Celtic show. Stephen, the great thing for you is you can get fed propaganda on the Rangers TV and other Rangers outlets and their forums. It's a great place for you just to revel in nonsense. Anytime you want, Stephen, you can go. It's absolutely fantastic. We do enjoy people who love their club and their football. We like a bit of banter. Stephen, if you want pro Rangers, this ain't the channel for you. We'll try and be objective about everything. And on that point with Rangers, we move to now the treatment of their fans. I think is a disgrace. I think the government official coming out and getting involved, and then, you know, this message to Rangers fans that they can't get in, now they're allowed in. They're losing a lot of money. It's a disgrace.
Yeah, I think it's scandalous. I think they've been very poorly treated. I think if I were in Rangers' shoes, I would be looking for avenues to get some kind of compensation, because it's poor, and at this time of year, it's a lot of money to go and follow your club into Europe, especially when you factor in the additional requirements of PCR tests and safe travel and everything. I think the time scale and the flipping and flopping of decisions is poor.
Yeah, French Home Office, this is what they had to say about Rangers. First and foremost, the movements of Rangers Football Club are frequently a source of disturbance to public order due to the violent behaviour of certain supporters or individuals at this point availing themselves on the quality of supporter of this team. During the first leg between Lyon and Rangers, which took place in September 16th in Glasgow, an attempted brawl between supporters was interrupted by police, and the official Lyon bus was also degraded. Despite the ban on the movement of Rangers supporters for the matches in Brøndby and Prague, they have repeatedly bypassed prohibitions on travel arrangements. So that was the French Home Office. Rangers' statement today released on the decision to ban fans being overturned. This is what they had to say, and we've been informed the previous decision by the French government regarding our away allocation has now been overturned. We welcome the update position that our supporters are now able to access the stadium in Lyon. We understand the situation continues to cause uncertainty and frustration, with many supporters having cancelled their flights and accommodation. Our corporate flight, which was cancelled yesterday, cannot be rearranged due to the short time scale involved. We are liaising with Olympic Lyon regarding ticket distribution arrangements for those supporters who managed to make alternative travel arrangements to the match. Well, with that in mind, that's not good enough. I think there should be, again, you know, Rangers should seek compensation for some of those supporters.
Most definitely. You know, as Alison said, you know, it's a lot of money to be laid out. And the biggest thing for teams, our teams that get into Europe, the fans, the first thing they look at is to get a reasonable near tie that they can go and enjoy, you know, and France is one of them. You know, it'd be easy to get to, and I'm sure a lot of them would have bought into it and looked forward to it for months and months ago. And I don't understand how initially they could come to that decision. But who was it that overturned it, Peter? Who overturned the decision?
Well, ultimately, Lyon and the government would have been in discussions, because what happens is Lyon and the government then have to check with the rules with UEFA and see if they are locked tight professionally on this. And if they're not, then they leave themselves wide open to legal scrutiny. So I'm almost certain somewhere along the line they've looked at this and said, listen, you cannot ban from a government stance a group of supporters because you think they're causing havoc everywhere. There's got to be a legitimate penalty under UEFA rules. That's my take on it, and I think that's a sensible approach to it, if that were the case. But Rangers are not banned for this one.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think there's been some kind of advice coming in from somewhere along those lines. I think there's a reason for the backtrack, and it's because someone has basically said what you're doing it's not possible to do it.
Okay, there's another little footnote to this, Ruffy, and again, more often than not, I do like to talk about football, but some of the football that attaches, some of the stories that attach themselves to football never cease to amaze me. And in the 2 years that we had lockdown as well, the madness just continues. Dave King has come out and condemned Rangers over the banning of Chris Sutton. He says he was banned for 2 Europa League matches. He said the idea that the club can silence fans, reporters of regulatory authorities is not only wrong, but it's completely unbecoming of Rangers as a club. King said, despite not being the beneficiary of comments from Sutton, he would never consider banning him from Ibrox and using health and safety as justification. I think somewhere down the line, this will go on and on. Anybody who says a word against him is either banned or certainly not able to afford 25 or 50 grand, to get this exclusive access to a press conference. But nevertheless, until there's a change of thought process at Ibrox, I think this unhealthy blockage between the media and Rangers will continue. My personal opinion, for what it's worth, to move forward as a country, to move forward as an organisation, to try and send out the right message to major sponsors, I think we need to have a whole rethink about how we market our game and how we stop individual clubs taking this attitude towards the media. I think we need to have a collective that moves forward together, painting a better image. That does not involve, may I add, that does not involve controlling people to put out your own propaganda.
No, and it is worrying a wee bit because we have got a panel of 5 people out there searching how we can bring money into the game. And if they go out there and they do a decent job, they said they're going to bring more money into the game. And what's happening, unfortunately, at Rangers will be a stumbling block for everybody to be united and moving forward. So the sooner somebody, or whoever they've all fallen out with, get together and sort it out, we're never going to get anywhere, because you have to do it as a bulk, and you can't have certain teams, going against everybody else.
Yeah.
But the Dave King thing, he's obviously been rumbled by somebody at Rangers because he's not happy, a happy chap with a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes there. And young Park seems to be the guy that's getting the brunt of it, and obviously his shares as well. He's a wee bit anxious about that as well. So he's obviously been upset, since he's stepped away, and he's just letting his feelings be felt.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe a journalist asked him the question on the day and he answered it. Hugh Scott says, Peter, is this not the same Dave King who was in charge when Rangers fell out with the BBC and banned Chris McLaughlin? I'm sure all of the boards going backwards have had a fallout. That may well be the case. I can't quite work out the timeline of every journalist that's ever fallen out with them. But I would say this, Alison, my thought process is not to hold any gripe against Rangers. My thought is for everybody to try and come together to move forward collectively and sort out the problems. In the last couple of years, I think Rangers should have been asked to sit around a table and said, let's forget about what's happened in the past. Let's move forward together. Yes, by all means, make your gripes about certain things, but let's move forward as an organisation for the Premiership, for the betterment of the game. They should have been brought in and, some kind of bridge, some kind of, not appeasement, but some kind of move towards everybody getting together rather than constantly bringing up things that have happened in the past.
The problem is that there is no appetite from Rangers for that to happen. Rangers don't have the desire to be conciliatory and to think that there is a benefit of having media involved. I think they're very content with their own in-house media and to prioritise that before every other aspect of the media. Now, what I would say, my own personal opinion from that would be if I was a Rangers fan, I think I would want a greater scope. I think I would probably want more balance. I think there are times, it wasn't last season, but there will be times when questions are difficult to ask. They can be awkward to ask. Peter, you and I would have sat in press conferences and have to ask fairly blunt questions about whether or not people are going to be in a job in the next few days. It's never an easy atmosphere. And I think there are other questions at times when you have to hold clubs and players and decisions to account. I'm not always sure that you get the same balance when it's in-house media. It's just a personal opinion that I think it's healthy overall, and I don't just mean in football, but I think it's healthy to have a media who are, there's a checks and balances that come with them. I think it has to be neutral, and I think whatever people say about the mainstream media, and we've heard plenty over the last 10 years or so, I think people try to be professional, they do their job. They do their job to the best of their ability, and I think they try and present as much coherent information as possible. And sometimes that's information that clubs might not wish to come into the public domain. As journalists, there are decisions to be made about making things public and finding out areas that are interesting for lots of different reasons. And I think when you try and deny that, I think it harms the image of the game first and foremost, but also I think as a supporter, I think you're being shortchanged.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you on that.
I think the new Rangers manager, I'm sure, would like to be up there and telling the big picture of how good his team is, rather than just telling certain individuals how good they are, who know they're good. But why not put your manager up there to say, look, how good are we, to everybody?
Steven Gerrard last season, I think Steven Gerrard too would probably, I found him engaging company anytime we got to speak to him. He's very articulate, he's very opinionated. He never came across as though we were eating up too much of his time. You got the impression that he was happy to answer questions. He's clever. He was able to hold a conversation. There's lots of interesting topics he was happy to go into decent depth about. I think so it doesn't come from the manager that there's an unwillingness to speak. I think it comes from a decision made within the club to promote one in-house media channel at the expense of other avenues. My own opinion is I think there's room for both.
Yeah, I was talking about it in a grander scale of as we move forward as an organisation, as we move forward as a country, if you're going to try and get marketing and PR to say, look, this is our product, this is how we move forward by creating a better image, not tarnishing the image, and not giving out this vision that we're all infighting all the time, squabbling and backstabbing each other, which unfortunately is at the moment the situation. Somebody says to us, do you agree with Dave King? I don't think it's healthy to ban individuals, whether it's Chris Sutton or anyone else. We've all had a ban at some point in our life from certain press conferences. You just get on with it, you do your best. By the way, in our fraternity and sorority, some people make mistakes. We're not all great. Some people can't look, as you mentioned there, Ruffy, and say, here's Steven Gerrard, let's talk about all the good things. There are some people who can see a dark cloud on a sunny day. But I always look back to what my great friend Hugh Keevans used to say was, you know, our job is to try and tell you things that they don't want you to know, and that is something that I think you've got to hold dear, whether it's sport or anything, politics, the lot in life. You need that democratic and free press. It's just I don't know how we get down that. Dave King started that there. I don't know why we get so heavily involved in it, but I'm sure some people will agree with Rangers' stance. But on a bigger scale, I think there should be talks with Rangers to bring them in and try and look forward, because it's such a big club, such a great fan base, and there are lots of great positive things about the club, but I think they should all be embraced rather than this constant division that seems to be going on at the moment. That's just me. You don't move forward in life by constantly looking at the past and bringing up negatives. Maybe I'm just looking for utopia. I'm not sure. Anyway, good news is quite simply that the SPFL have been working hard with SFA in the background. UK has agreed that the employment visa system for workers will continue after January, so that, you know, foreign players can still come into our game, because this could have been a real blow to Scottish football, given the significant number of overseas players who enhance our league, says Neil Doncaster, and Scotland's relatively small size in comparison to other nations. It was absolutely imperative that we were able to convince the UK government to maintain the exemptions panel. And this is the panel, Ruffy, that looks upon players who may well not have, you know, a huge amount of international caps, but certainly have the potential to enhance our game by being employed here.
Yeah, we saw it on numerous occasions. You know, the bigger clubs have been trying to bring maybe somebody over from Brazil or whatever, you know, because they've not got the international, you know, criteria, they can't get them. So I think it's good for the players, it's good for the clubs, because I think a lot of the supporters like to see foreign players coming into the game. You know, it adds something to some of the teams, and as long as they're good value, long may it continue. I think we've got a present crop at all the clubs that are coming in. The foreign players have added something to our game, a wee bit of excitement, something new at the beginning of the season. And long may it continue.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks to the countless amount of people constantly posting messages on our YouTube. You can also download the PLZ Soccer app. It has all the latest breaking football news, and in submissions you can post a message in there. We try and read out as many as possible, and get your thoughts on football, and they come, I can tell you, from near and far, so it's absolutely brilliant. And if you want to, if you record a video in there and we use it on the show, we'll send you out a wee early Christmas present, which incidentally we're hoping to do this week, because you can win an Xbox this week on the show, Rafi. It's quite simple. All you have to do is subscribe to the PLZ Soccer YouTube channel, and also follow us on PLZ Soccer's Facebook channel as well, and it's as simple as that. I'm really looking forward to giving it away the week before Christmas, an Xbox.
Fantastic. I have to hold my hands up and say I've never had an Xbox, so I've saw kids with it, and it's I'm sure they could live on it all day, couldn't they?
Yeah.
It's been in my life.
It's
been in my life.
Yeah, thankfully my daughter kind of sneaks in and out, is not addicted to it.
Does it do Pac-Man? Does it do the
yeah. I have to say, Robbie, I have to say, I was going to say it's moved on, but I've got one of those old classic Space Invaders games, you know, the box. I thought, hey, Costco, you can't beat it. Anyway, there goes a sponsor. Dundee United's Callum Butcher has been called to account by the FA for a foul on Celtic's David Turnbull, and he could face another suspension. Butcher has been issued with a notice of complaint and charged with breaking the rules on serious foul play. Have already been on the end of a ban this season. The player has not been offered a fixed ban and will face the disciplinary panel on December 9th. Right decision?
Yeah, I think there was no ambiguity about it. I think it was a straight red card. It should have been a straight red card. I think had Turnbull's foot been planted properly in the grass, I think there's a real chance that he could have ended up with a broken leg.
Yeah, I think no argument at all, and I'm sure the player himself will realise, it could have been a bad one, not only for Turnbull, it could have been a bad one for him, because when you break somebody's leg, that's you for the rest of your career. People remember you're the guy who did that. So he's lucky nothing serious happened as well, and I'm sure he'll just take his fine.
It's a strange one that you mentioned that, because it just sits in my head now. It's been a while. It's been a long time since I could think of a player breaking another player's leg. It's the sport has changed. There's greater protections in place.
You don't have the same physicality, or a lot of times it can be quite an innocuous challenge sometimes. I'm thinking of the incident with Son. Sport between Spurs and Everton. I think was that last season or the season before, and he was devastated when he realised he'd done it. He was absolutely devastated. I think the two of them went for the same challenge, and he was sent off, but I think he was sent off basically because the referee felt as though he had to.
Yeah.
But you're right, I think the frequency of it isn't as it was previously. I suppose some of that comes down to better pitches and better conditions that you're playing in, but definitely I think the physical elements of the game aren't where they were even 20 years ago or so.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt someone will remind us of a leg breaker. I mean, I know everybody thinks about Roy Keane with Alpha Inga Haaland. Wasn't the best challenge I could ever remember, and there's a few others. Although I wonder how many leg breaks Claudio Gentile had playing for club and country. Robbie, he was a bit of a hard guy, wasn't he?
Yeah, they certainly will. But I think the biggest thing they taken out of the game is the tackle from behind.
Yeah,
the tackle from behind was just horrendous. For any strikers, there was no law that you couldn't do it, so you just come in and just took them out of the game.
Yeah. I think if the tackle from behind had been banned in the 80s, Paul Sturrock could play till he was about 52, because he was one of the best players I ever saw holding the ball in, rough. He was fantastic.
Yeah, he had the ability as well to sort of do that wee shimmy and get out the road of it, but he took some heavy hits in his career.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Ange Postecoglou has been talking about the game against Real Betis. Is there anything at stake in this one? Here's what the Celtic manager had to say.
One bad knee, and I'm well overweight, but I'd love to play. I don't think anyone would not want that opportunity. European nights for our club are always special, And for me as a manager, it's great because, as you said, they're going to get meaningful minutes. Real Betis, we saw on the weekend, they're a top side. So I want some guys who, like I said, need some minutes to get some meaningful minutes and really expose them to that sort of football so that they get ready for what's ahead.
Okay, I take his point. There's lots of players who will relish the thought of playing a European match, but it's a dead rubber.
Yeah, I don't think there's any sugarcoating it. It is a dead rubber. I think what he may be wary of is being on the back of a hefty defeat, because I think it saps morale. There's a danger that it disrupts momentum. At the same time, I think it makes absolute sense for him to bring in players who are fringe players and have a look at them, and it affords them the chance to rest key players who are going to be needed over the course of the next month when you've got such a heavy calendar. And I'm thinking of the likes of Callum McGregor, who, by the time you get to the end of this season, he'll have played 50, 60 odd games. I think it's the ideal game maybe just to take him out, give him a rest. Tom Roderick, who's just back from injury, I think could do with a rest. Furuhashi, I think it would make sense just to give some of these guys a bit of a break. Even I wonder too about maybe Joe Hart, about taking him out. I think Celtic have got a very highly rated young reserve goalkeeper. The boys in the England under-21 squad, I think there's been quite a bit of attention, quite a lot of chat about him. It might be interesting to see how he gets on in a game of this magnitude.
As far as the competition for places and people that want to run out in this match, Greg Taylor was a welcome return to the side against Dundee United. He's got Liam Scales, who can also play left back, and I think Taylor's quite happy there's competition.
As well, just copy and pasting this for every press I do. There's always going to be a competition in every place. At the size of this club, it's normal. Every player looks to relish it, and hopefully it brings the squad stronger.
Well, I'm going to say this in a positive sense about Greg Taylor. I think it's a great answer for him. There's always going to be competition. I think we've all been signalling his demise from that first team for long and weary since he signed. If anything, at times, what's been labelled at him as he's too small for being a left back when they're playing European football. But when that boy comes in, he absolutely gives his all. And I don't think, and certainly in the last year, even pre the injury, Ruffy, he's let anyone down. I just think that he's like a whipping boy for some.
Yeah, and that's why he'd be given a new deal, so the club think he's got something to play for, that he is a certain, in our league, I think he's as good as anybody there is, but when you want to go to another level, sometimes players just can't go to that other level, and unfortunately I think he is one of them, that he's good within his own group of players and teams that they're playing in, but European level, I think he just gets caught out a wee bit. But certainly, I would have him in Celtic team anytime.
Yeah, Ali, your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think you're right in terms of the whipping boy image. I think there have been suspicions, and I think people have been a bit open about bringing in other left backs. I think he's probably spent his whole Celtic career listening to chat of every transfer window that they need to go in and bring in another left back. He also had the job of walking in and stepping into Kieran Tierney's shoes, which was always going to be a considerable ask.
There is another left back there, by the way, just in case you've forgotten about him.
Yeah.
He's sitting picking up wages and he's not part of the plans.
Yeah, absolutely. I know.
Bolingoli.
I think we all forget about Bolingoli and the fact he's there. I think few of us never expected to see him in a Celtic shirt after everything that happened, but he might be one of the ones I think that would move on in January if there's an offer that comes in that's suitable to both parties. But in terms of Greg Taylor, I think his attitude and I think his work rate is beyond reproach. I think he gives his all, and I think he's maybe watched with interest over the last few months the renaissance of Anthony Ralston and just how he's reforged a reputation in the eyes of the Celtic support and what he's done, how a bit of confidence and a bit of momentum has just improved his game so much, and in terms of what he has to offer, and you see the confidence in his game now. So I think he'll be fancying that if he gets a run in the team, he can do likewise.
Yeah. Okay, as far as the Celtic Rangers in the Europa League is concerned, obviously we'll look at it in greater detail tomorrow, Ruffy, and Thursday. You won't be with us for those next 2 days, so the dead rubber is Celtic. Rangers are through. They're looking forward to a knockout competition, so maybe a chance for both to give other players a run to say, hey, don't you forget about me.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I think when you look at how many games there are for both this season, how none of them have a huge amount of depth within their squads, I think it makes sense to avoid a game where you risk picking up injuries to key players, given the magnitude of games that lie ahead. I think it's sensible to tweak squads at this point.
Predictions?
I think Celtic will probably lose to Real Betis. I think Real Betis are a pretty decent outfit, and I fancy Rangers might get a draw in Lyon.
Okay, Rafi?
I've not made up my mind yet.
Okay,
I want to see these teams you're talking about that nobody's playing and everybody's getting rested. If I had a team sheet in front of me, I'd have a better idea.
You're beginning to do my head in. You're like that crew. I've got a list of about 10 pundits I used to work with, Ali, and they're all, I'm not going to give you an opinion until I see the team sheet rubbish, just so you don't offend anybody.
I'm not offending anybody. I'm just saying that I would have a better
pundit,
clue.
Give us an opinion. That's why you're so far behind in the Predictor.
No, I'm not that far behind now. Catching up. What will I go? See, I don't even know what Team Leon's going to put out. I don't know, because they're done and dusted.
Just
as
out of
well.
curiosity, see if I give you the team.
All right, okay.
Don't give me an opinion.
Go, right.
See if I give you the team that Leon are going to put out tomorrow.
Yeah.
Your knowledge of French football, I could write in the back of a penny
You're right.
black stamp.
That's why I want to see the Rangers team.
Right, okay then.
So, okay, I'll go Leon 2-1 and Celtic 1 each.
Yeah, okay.
Which means...
Well, it means that somebody can give you abuse on the feed here. By the way, Ali, I might as well tell you, let's have a look at the Predictor. Give us your thoughts on it, Alison, because suddenly that arrogant, condescending look that you give us every week is slipping away, Ali. 2 points behind you now. I am on 135. Ruffy is in 133, which is, he had such a good run over the last couple of weeks. Hugh McDonald on 125 points. Gabriel is on 119 and Tam McManus 110.
Yeah, I think I have to start upping my game. I think I maybe start having to get interested now.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I'll tell you. Hey, there's that's what I call a change in a manager's tone. You can spot it a mile off, Ruffy. Eh?
Yeah, but we're still up there. I mean, we shouldn't be worrying about the other three really, since they're not here. So,
yeah, absolutely. We'll not be worrying about them. They're paying for the meal, one of them anyway. We've just got to stay out in front, Ruffy. Listen, Jan de Fuchs is creating a bit of a stir. Performances for Dundee United certainly catching the attention of, as ever, always linked with Celtic and Rangers. Tam Courts is adamant that that interest is there.
I think you see today from John Doe's performance, and even been out, for a couple of weeks, that he's a top player, not just for us, but a top player in this league. So I've always went on record as saying that if any of our players, particularly the top performing ones, have got aspirations to get into the top level, then the types of clubs you mentioned are naturally going to be interested. But John Doe's a focused guy. My relationship with him is really strong, and he likes to do his talking on the pitch. So yeah, there's nothing much more I can say on that.
Yeah, I mean, he's not surprised by suggestions that Celtic and Rangers are interested. There'll be other clubs interested. The only thing that's just a little caveat to that's maybe not to Dundee United's benefit is he signed from Alavas last October, but the deal included a high sell-on fee for Fuchs, so he'll be getting weighed in himself.
Yeah, and I think that maybe pushes his own price up a bit in terms of negotiations in Dundee United, wanting to make sure they recoup as much money as possible for him. I think he's played well. I think he's caught the eye a few times. I've seen Dundee United quite a bit this season. They've obviously had a very impressive start to the campaign. I think he's a good player. I think he's fairly solid. I think the risk when you maybe move to either Celtic or Rangers is fighting to get into the first team and fighting to displace people who are already established. I think footballer players themselves always trust themselves to be able to do that, but I think it is quite a step up.
Yeah, I'm not too sure he's good enough for Celtic or Rangers.
If you give me the three for Rangers, Rebo, Kent's in there as well, Davis, you look at Celtic, McGregor, Turnbull, not for me.
Yeah.
Good player, but not
at that level. Yeah. I always like this time just reading out a few. Once we talk about a topic, I like reading out a few of the messages just to give you
the Muppet messages.
No. Well, you say the Muppet messages. I think some of the banter's quite good. Bob says Fuchs, he's mince, so he's not happy with him. Robert Highland says I'd take Fuchs on a free next season, and also. United are rubbish now, says Stephen Hamilton. And David Bradley is just quite simply decided to use 3 quick words: don't rate him. So, listen, he's a player who's caught the eye, and certainly somebody will bite in there. Never mind about Celtic and Rangers or Hearts complaining about match officials or their fans. David Martindale's not happy with the referee's chief over decisions against Livingston. He's really been quite forthright in his comments against the ref in the game against Aberdeen, Craig Napier, and he was well from happy with the assistant in the game against Hearts, Frank Connor. Martindale saying the smaller clubs don't get the decisions that the bigger clubs do, and VR must be brought in as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think the reason the smaller clubs don't get the same decisions are that the Rangers and Celtic have got bigger crowds. You know, if something happens in a penalty box and 50,000 people scream, there's a big difference for Ibrox and Parkhead than there is at Arminville. You know, if there's maybe 500 behind the goal shouting a penalty. I'm not saying the referees react to it, but there must be something in your mechanism, when that amount of people shout. The bit I do agree with him is, I mean, I don't see the verbals that go on between the manager and the linesman or the fourth official, but it does seem a bit get in your box, get behind your line. You know, let's sort of relax a wee bit and talk to each other in equal terms, because, I mean, football's a very vocal sport, and managers are going to maybe verbally say something they shouldn't, but they've got to accept. The referee, it's usually the fourth official that calls over the referee for something that somebody said, and it might be industrial language or something, but I think there's got to be, unless he's actually physically saying something to the referee, then he deserves everything he gets. But some of the times I've seen a referee pulling out a yellow card for getting your dugout, I mean, I don't know, because it's not happening to me.
Yeah.
But if you're going with what the managers are saying in the heat of the moment, sometimes you say some things. But
now,
unless to get sent into the stand, it has to be something outrageous.
Yeah, can I say that there are still some referees that you can have a bit of banter with? You only have to, I speak to countless professional footballers. I mean, even Charlie Adam, as last week mentioned, there are still some referees who you can have a bit of banter with. There are some coming through that I just feel have that teacher and pupil attitude to it.
Yeah, I think there are some who are overly officious. I think it's a sign of a good referee, actually, when you can have a bit of conversation with people, when you can talk them through it. I think you forge a respect between the officials and the player, and I think a small bit of respect can go a long way in that environment.
And I think we've got to learn as well, they're on the up as well. The young ones are on a ladder to success, and they are so focused on getting it right, because if they get it wrong, they're going to get a mark against them, and they don't, that many marks, they won't progress their future up. So you've got to see where they're coming from as well, but you would like to think that some of them, as you say, would just relax a wee bit and just take it all in.
I think there's a common sense element to it, I think, and some of that I think does come.
Common sense, Ali, in the game, for God's sake. You'll be talking about sporting integrity next.
I think some of that comes with experience. I think some of that comes just when you trust yourself and you trust your decision-making process, and you maybe relax a wee bit, which I think does come with a bit of maturity from officials' point of view. But Alan's right. You think financial rewards for referees just now can be significant. If you make it onto FIFA's pool and you're involved in European games, it can be a fairly lucrative career choice, but you have to have a reputation for getting it right, and you have to be good.
You also have to have a reputation for being able to look at an incident as a referee that is not swayed by 50,000 screaming down your neck.
Yeah, I get the point though. Yeah, and I do take the point.
That's just like a footballer.
Yeah.
You know, being experienced enough, well, should I have done that, should I not have done that? And I've seen, in the director's box at Partick Thistle, we have a referee supervisor at every game. And they have a piece of paper that says 1 to 90 minutes. And every time there's an incident, there's a comment against that incident. And that can come back. No, they'll obviously have a meeting. They'll go into the referee's room afterwards and say, like, guys, how do you think, blah, blah, blah. But this is in black and white, you know, how young referees are doing.
But they're not left to sink, Ruffy.
No,
that
they
whole
have
part
a chat.
is explained and said, look, this is why you should have got to that decision, you know. And, you know, there are times, listen, we get it wrong, we call things wrong. In fact, we were talking about it earlier on with the referees. VAR will help with a lot of it. It's not the definitive, as English football will tell you, because they went through a really painful process.
That first season was hard.
The second year, I think what they did was they collectively said, okay, here are the bits we've ironed out. If anything, it is just what I call reducing the percentage of mistakes.
Absolutely, I would completely agree with it. I think the first year that VAR in was almost like that. It was like an over-official referee. I think you were taking things to the nth degree, toenails offside and things like that. I think it's been more relaxed in its second season, and I think the interpretation of things hasn't been quite so rigid, which has afforded an opportunity to, one, let the game flow as much as possible, but two, to call it back and make a very quick assessment. But I think it's been much more seamless this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Good news, Ruffy. The Scottish Youth Football Association announced today that there's a record number of players, more than 68,000 children and young people now officially registered across 4,000 Scottish teams up and down the country, and that eclipses the previous record by 6,000. So I think that's great news. It's the highest number of grassroots youth players playing the game in Scotland since the association was formed 22 years ago. I'd like to see a breakdown of boys and girls, because I think the girls' uptake now is girls looking and saying, I can see a pathway as a career.
Yeah, and also the boys as well. I think we've got to thank Stevie Clark and the Scottish national team. I think a lot of people are now buying into our national side, and I'm sure young kids will be loving it. Getting taken to a Scotland game, they've probably never been to one, and they're buying into seeing Scotland doing well. And then you move to the girls. Our girls now are competing in European Cups, so they're competing in big championships, and the success of the national team is really important, I think, to young kids. Everybody has their own team that they support, but nationally, I think a lot more are maybe not associated with any particular club side buy into wanting to play football because the national team's doing well.
Yeah, long may it continue. Stephen Hamilton says, why don't refs get interviewed like the managers? Well, interestingly enough, the German match official was interviewed regarding the Borussia Dortmund Bayern Munich game on why he gave the penalty, which is Matt Hummels with the arm. And I think Jude Bellingham's got himself in a bit of trouble with it. And I'm looking at the fine, Ali. He came out and criticised him. The referee was Felix Zweier. And Jude Bellingham came out and referred to the official 6-month ban for match fixing back in 2005, and he's been fined for unsportsmanlike behaviour. And it probably won't be a hefty fine to him, but it's about 34 grand.
Yeah, it'd be hefty to you and I.
Not Ruffy.
I read his comments actually, and I thought, wow, he really went for it. In some ways, I had a degree of sympathy. I think if you are done for match fixing as a referee, it's never going away. You can serve your ban, but I think there is an air of suspicion that does hang over you forevermore. I think it's very, very difficult to earn the trust of people again after something like that. And I don't know the circumstances around it, but I just think once you lose people's trust, it can be very difficult to get it back again.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, he's got a fine for it. One shock result from last night. Boy, did Everton need a win. They got it against Arsenal. Rafa was under pressure, wasn't he?
We said that yesterday, that the games are running out for him, but lo and behold, these managers at that level tend to get the result they need at the right time, and that certainly was a good one, although it was late on. Yeah,
Rafa says it was just perfect from start to finish.
Everybody delighted at the end because the reaction, because the great goal that the Mariah scored, and then 3 points after a bad run. So I think everything was, you can say, perfect, no, in terms of communication between players and fans, and the performance and the final score.
I feel sorry for Rafa because there's no doubt he's a good manager. I think if he could have a long-term plan with a board backing him and the ability to maybe have more of a say in the selection of players that he wants to buy, I think sometimes if you put your future in the hands of some directors of football, I mean the director of football at Everton I think has been replaced now, it's a lot of money they've wasted on mediocre players.
Absolutely, I think you've got to. I think your manager should always have final say. For me, I think understand now how much the game has changed, and you do need a modern structure, I think, in terms of a head of recruitment and a fairly substantial scouting network. But I think your manager has to be heavily involved in that process, and because he knows how he wants his team to play, the style, and you know the characteristics of players and how they come in and where they fit in to the system that you want to play. But it was an enormous win for them last night, and from a Scottish perspective, I think Kieran Tierney done particularly well for Arsenal until he went off. I think that's the first game in 6 or 7 that he'd started. Thought he played pretty well for the time that he was on.
Yeah, just on that, Rafi, do you have a chief scout, or does Ian McCall look at players and decide himself?
No, we have people down in England who go to games, and anybody who sees some young boy or sees somebody like Davy Moyes has done as a turn. Davy identified the big centre half that he had, that he said, look, we're going to release him. We don't think he's going to make it here, but he's certainly one that I think you should use, and he's been a star man, and he's signing a new contract. Well, we hope he's signing a new contract next week, but that's the kind of thing.
If a player is suggested to you, right, David Moyes, that's great.
Oh no, Ian McCall.
Will he go and look at them?
Yeah.
Would he go and look at the majority of players?
Yeah. He's already identified 4 or 5 for the transfer window, but he's not getting them. Only joke, Ian, if you're watching.
Exactly. Yeah.
Can get one.
I was just about to say, I'm glad he's narrowed it down to 4 or 5 for Collie. Anyway, apart from anything else, yeah, it's just good to get an insight into it, because, Ruffy, as I was going to point out, the analysis picked up on it, that is not the case now in modern football with a lot of clubs. Players are signed and you have to accommodate them as a coach and fit them into your system.
Yeah, and some people will go down the road to say, well, what manager's going to say no to a good player? But if he's not your player, and then when you come to a bad sticky bit and you've got team selection to pick, and are you going to pick that guy when he's not your guy? And it's unfair on the guy as well, because he'd probably want to move to a better club as well. So it's a sticky situation all round.
Yeah, absolutely. If you are in control of the TV control tonight, here are your options on the Champions League over the next 2 days. In fact, here's the fixtures for this evening. It's PSG versus Club Brugge, then Leipzig, Man City, Porto, Atletico, AC Milan against Liverpool, Ajax, Sporting Lisbon, Dortmund, Besiktas, Real Madrid against Inter Milan, and Shakhtar against Sheriff Tiraspol. And if you were looking at it for the next night, then here's what's on option for you. Zenit against Chelsea, Juventus Malmo, Benfica Dynamo Kiev, Atalanta Villarreal, Wolfsburg Lille, Salzburg Seville, Man United against the Young Boys, and Bayern Munich against Barcelona. So tonight, Ali, where's your money on this one? I mean, I should possibly suggest to you that I think AC Milan Liverpool looks tidy, but most of these games have all been decided now.
Yeah, we're just waiting in the last 32, aren't we? We're just wanting to know the big boys to get thrown in there. And if we're still going down this road, you can't play against anybody for your own country.
Only to once it gets to, I think, quarterfinals and semi-finals.
I'll give you that.
Why?
They should be in it right at the start.
Yeah.
Whoever you get drawn against, that's who you play.
Yeah, is that it?
Yeah, that's for me anyway.
Yeah, ruthless you now, right? See how he gets tougher in his opinions towards the end of the show. Ali, what one would you be watching? I mean, Leipzig, Man City, maybe.
I think Leipzig.
They don't have a manager.
I was just going to say Jesse Marsh has just parted company with him, but I think Leipzig and Manchester United might be of intrigue.
Yeah, over the next 2 days.
Yeah.
Would you watch them without the madness of your family jumping on your head?
We have school discos and all sorts to be ferrying backwards and forwards to for the next few days. So I'll see 15 minutes here and 15 minutes there.
Yeah, absolutely.
The thought of an uninterrupted 2 hours viewing and a glass of wine seems significantly removed.
Yeah. I love the way
it's the kids that are going to the party. It's a school party.
I love the way Ali always associates that 2 hours has to have a glass of wine.
Kids are away, give me a bottle.
Just said, I don't know, I must be from a different game completely. I never automatically think I'm going to sit on the couch and watch the game with a beer. Would you? Oh, of course you would. The first time I met him and I said to him, I'll meet you, I can't remember, it was one of these beef eater places. I said, I'll meet you till we talk about starting the show. This is 10 years ago. And he says, I like I said, do you want a drink? He says, give me a Guinness and a gin and tonic as a chaser. And I thought, it was 5:30. And I'm thinking, who has a gin and tonic and a Guinness? You like a wee drink, don't you, Ruffy? Not overly.
My fatal, my 70th birthday, my wife bought me a lager machine.
Oh, the tap.
What?
A tap on draft, which has been a failure. You know,
Oh, has it? Is it too tempting?
It's too tempting. I mean, I get up, as we know, during the night and having a wee lager at 3 in the morning. When you can have a tap of water, it drags you towards it because you just want to.
Is it a keg?
It's a small
Refillable keg?
Yeah, you refill them all and you get, I think it's 40 pints out of it, and it's draft, it's chilled, it's the real deal. It is just wonderful.
Oh, that is magnificent.
And you can pick 40 different lagers, and it's the wee boy up in Coatbridge.
Brilliant, Ruffy.
So he's sitting on the couch tonight. You know what he's having in hand.
Yeah, I must apologise to everyone. I've had a sore throat, and thank God I haven't got Ruffy's little draft keg, or I wouldn't be able to speak at all. But nevertheless, it's not a bad idea for someone for a Christmas present, Ruffy. It's quite a good idea.
The only problem is you don't only get 10 pints. So if you get 3 or 4 guys in, it's not going to last very long.
Yeah.
So you don't tell them where it is.
Okay.
You just tell them you've not got one.
I'm going to give people a chance not to win the beer, although we'll see if we can come up with a deal for that, Ruffy. I'm not sure what the regulations are, but we are giving you the chance to win an Xbox One. I'll bring the box in and show you it on tomorrow's programme, and we'll fire the advert out as well to give you the chance to. Quite simply, if you subscribe to our channel, then quite simply you're in the box, you're in the running for the winning of the Xbox. And you can also go on our PLZ Soccer Facebook and follow us. The minute you do that, you're also in the hat. So good luck for that. Interestingly enough, Ali, if I couldn't get you a keg of beer or a box of wine, what would be your ideal football present for Christmas if you could pick one? Even if it was a game or something like that?
Tickets for the playoff in March, I think. I would like to have taken my son to the playoff, I think, and not go in a professional capacity, but I think it'd be nice to go as a fan.
With the Scotland top on, giving it big licks?
Don't own a Scotland top, and I don't think I'd squeeze into one that he's got, but yeah, I think it would be fun. I think if you were offering me a football gift, that's the one I'd go for. Okay,
that's not a bad one, Ruffy.
I was going to suggest it could be a birthday present from me, because I get 2 tickets for every home game, but I'll be going to that one myself.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I'm looking for Christmas, and I've said to my wife to get the finger out on it. Is I don't know if you've witnessed it. The Ajax third kit is a tribute to Bob Marley.
Oh, I have seen it. The colours,
absolutely fantastic. It's got Marley 10 on the back,
and
the Rastafarian red, yellow, and green colours in the Adidas stripes.
So
it is fantastic.
The connection.
There's no connection. It's just
Bob
sheer
Marley.
Marketing. It's Bob Marley. What more do you want?
My son wants a Spurs third kit or away kit that looks as though someone spilled a pot of paint all over it. It's absolutely hideous.
It's like the worst Scotland strip of all time, which was the 1990. Do you remember the goalkeeper and the diamonds and it was just chevrons everywhere. Anyway, what's your ideal football Christmas present? There's a thought for us. Don't forget to subscribe. The minute you do, you're in the hat as well. And you can go to our Facebook page, PLZ Soccer, and hit follow as well. And we'll give you more details of how you can get your name in the hat if you've already subscribed to our channel. So just in case you think you're missing out today, there's more details coming tomorrow as well. Thanks to Ali. Great chat with you, Ali, and as ever with Ruffy as well. And thanks to you for sticking with us here today. Don't forget, we'll be back with you tomorrow. Charlie, Adam, Tam McManus, Ruffy and myself, Peter Martin. Thanks for watching.